بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Yeah, basically there's a question from a question like how we can stay active with the competition or how we can make ourselves more valuable to the company or the organization. It totally depends on the learning. Okay, so see when you're working for any company, the company will only you know look out how they can make you to work. Means normally most of the time when you're working, you might be shifting from one domain to another domain. That is again common. Of course, at the end, you have to focus on the learning part. Let's take an example. You have started as a level one engineer, network engineer role, maybe as a fresher, maybe whatever the role. Because at the beginning, when you're starting, you work for 2 to 3 years. Generally, most of the companies have a contract where you work for 2 years and they train you. Mostly they train you as per their projects and the requirements. This is very common because when you're working for a company, most of the job roles, what you do, the trainings, what you get, it's totally based on the projects. Of course, that is important for the company because at the end they are paying. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that whatever the learning part, it is also helping you to move on a specific domain. Like let's say you're working as a network engineer role and for the 2 years and you will be learning some routing skills. Of course you did routing and switching skills and you're majorly working on any of this domain, and additionally if you're adding some other skill set like firewalls or VPNs, that is going to add advantage at the end. You'll be having an advantage. So, and also during this process, you might be configuring Cisco devices. For some clients, you might be having some Juniper devices, and for some, they will be using a FortiGate devices. So the different vendors, you'll also keep learning different vendors as well while you are implementing the things. But the challenge, because these are all relevant linked, we can say linked technologies, which will always be make your profile much stronger as a network security engineer or network engineer, these kind of things. But the challenge comes when you are working, when you join as a network engineer or a routing switching engineer, but slowly you move on to some admin related roles, or maybe you move to some marketing roles, or sometimes you move to the different project management kind of roles, and that's where it becomes a challenge. Okay. So whatever the projects you work on, it has to be a little bit relevant. That's something you need to make sure, and that will automatically keep you learning. And even though if you don't now, sometimes you might not have enough projects, or maybe you're just doing the same repeated task every day. You just go to the office and you just sit in the office and you will be doing the same task. You have nothing to do. You just go to as a level one, level two engineer. You do some monitoring, you do some troubleshooting a little bit, maybe occasionally, and you have just one network setup, or maybe you have 2, 3 clients, and there's no much learning in this part because when you're working for an IT solution companies, let's say if you're working for any IT solutions, you have different clients, different projects where you keep learning. You need to keep learning, you know, as for the job role. That is kind of a demand. But let's say if you're working for one company, like I've seen there are few people work for a government-based organizations, and they have the complete one setup, and that will not change for many years, like maybe 10 plus to 20 years. And they might be working for more than 5 to 8 years, and suddenly they realize, after 5 to 8 years, there is no career movement. Like you're not getting much salary hikes, and also at the same time you're not even moving on a different senior positions. So suddenly you realize that you have to move on with another job. Now that's where the problem comes, because whatever the amount of time you have spent, if you're not learning, which means it's almost like a fresher. You have the experience, but you're not in a position to clear the interviews. Okay? So you have to motivate yourself to learn. Like normally if you're working professional, I strongly suggest you dedicate 2 hours per day on the learning, 2 to 3 hours, like roughly 20 hours it's per week. It's important that you focus on learning. Now you have to identify what skill set, a relevant skill set, which will make your profile stronger. So, what learning? Of course, the skill set you have to add, which can make your profile much stronger. Like if you are working as a network engineer, again, you might be adding some firewall skills, VPN skills, or relevant skills, or SD-WAN skills, these kind of things. Now, how we can identify? Simple. Either you watch your seniors or the other team members what they are doing. Obviously, they will be working on some multiple technologies, so you learn those things. And also based on the projects or based on the network setup, what you have and what you don't know. Like you have the network setup with FortiGate firewall, but you don't know the FortiGate firewall, so probably you'll be adding that skill set. You see there is a VPN setup, but you don't know how to configure the VPNs, you will be adding that. So whatever the skill set you relevant, which is something other senior teammates or other people are doing, you add the skill set that will make your profile much stronger. Okay. Now this is something mandatory, not just now, because if you want to grow, you have to learn. You have to keep learning. You have to make the habit of learning. Minimum 20 hours of per week. That's something what I suggest. If you're doing some sessions, roughly you're spending almost 10, like 4 to 5 hours on learning classes and practice. Like it makes it easily 10 to 20 hours. Okay? So that's what I suggest to stay ahead with compared to others or to be in order to grow, because there is a lot of scope. Because if you keep on learning, I have seen many people who just started as like just a quick example, who just have the basic knowledge on the CCNA, working as a level one with 2 years of experience. Roughly, let's say they are making some XYZ amount. I'm not going to mention because it will be different. Let's say in Indian rupees, let's say they are making 20K per day per month. That's something kind of thing. And they have been doing they added the skill set like CCNP and then maybe some firewalls, get some experience parallelly, keep on learning. So this whatever you're making now, maybe you have 2 years of experience, and if you're doing for the next 5 years, probably by the next 5 years it will be almost like into two or into three or easily. Okay. So every year you can have at least 30% of salary hikes, or increments or moving a different job, different roles. You can easily make a difference. So, which means it's almost like double for next 3 4 years easily. That is only possible with learnings. Okay, so the more you learn, the more you add the skill set. Of course, it's very important to identify the skill set what you need to add. It's not just you are learning, you're learning some kind of programming which is not relevant to your skill set or the job. That's not going to help you. Okay, so you have to add on skill set. Many people say, learn automation, learn this, learn cloud. There are many kind of learn cyber security. I generally get the people asking like, I want to do cyber security, but at the back end, when you ask them, okay, you want to, because they realize that cyber security is in demand, and then there is a huge scope, huge jobs, and all these things. You will see the blocks and everything. But if that is not relevant to your experience, if that is not relevant to your core skill set, there's no point in learning that. You're working as a network engineer, and you don't have two things you need to two things will decide what you will learn. The first one is the background skill set. So I'm not saying network engineers can move to the cyber security. That is a different case. But there's a roadmap. You need to add the firewall skill set. You need to learn the VPNs. You need to have some additional programming skill set, and you need to have the project, maybe a project, or maybe your company is looking forward for you to support or train, or because if you're learning the skill set and if you're not working on it, then it's almost like no experience. Of course, it will be good to add in the resume. So these things you have to consider. At the same time, cloud is good. You need to understand. You need to have some idea about Azure cloud, because most of the devices we host on it. But at the same time, these are add-on skill set. This is not the core skill set. You don't need to learn DevOps and other things, which many people, ask me, these things. Automation, okay, it's good. You don't need to be an expert in automation. You need to know the basics of automation. That is good enough. Because Cisco have its own automation solutions like SD-WAN, SDA, graphical interface, Every vendor have their own products. So this will vary. So it vary based on individuals, based on your background experience, based on what you, based on many things. What in which projects you're working, what kind of roles. So relevant skills you need to keep on adding. That is the most important thing. Add the relevant skill set. That will automatically make you to be a better compared to others, and always you'll be in demand. Okay. Of course, you have to keep learning at least for 10 to 15 years. If you're starting your job as a network engineer today, then probably for the next 10 years, you need to keep learning. And then after 10 years, you can say, okay, I don't need to learn anything now. That's something you can stop after that. Even if you're keeping learning after that, also, still you will grow. Because once you're at this position, either if you're sitting as a project manager or IT manager, you don't need to learn anything. But if you're into field, if you're working as a consultant, and if you are working or providing the solutions, you need to keep adding the new technologies, and you always need to do that. Okay. So once you learn for 8 to 10 years, you will be get used to it automatically. Okay. So this is something what I suggest for anyone who is working or not working. So you have to plan the things as per that.